Thomas Mayo was instrumental in the design of the voice, and he's leading the campaign for yes. Given that eminent constitutional minds like the late D.F. Jackson make it clear that there's no need to change the Constitution to get a body with the function of providing this voice, what's the real agenda that's going on here?
Look, I mean, as I said, this is a Trojan horse. Individuals like Mr. Mayo, who are driven by the unions, who have, evidently an underlying agenda about setting up a black institution to be weaponised to punish those of us, parliamentarians and politicians, who don't agree with it. He has a different agenda, and however he's trying to sell this to the Australian people like it's all warm and fuzzy and it's this wonderful entity that's going to improve the lives of Indigenous Australians. And what is evident is that this isn't a grassroots push. This is being pushed by the unions. This is being pushed by the elites, those that have had a seat at the table for a long time and who haven't actually addressed disadvantage for remote Indigenous Australians who are our most disadvantaged in this country. And it's very concerning, especially when Mayo is very forthright about what he wants to see done, which is to do things like abolish Australia Day. And as he said, design a black institution. And I'd imagine that it wouldn't be just about punishing those of us politicians that don't support it, but, Australians in general, reparations. Why should modern day Australians, non-Indigenous Australians, pay for historical injustices that occurred in our history? It's not right, and it's really, really divisive.
And it doesn't help the struggling woman in a remote community. It doesn't help the person who fears violence. It doesn't help the child who's not going to school. If we're serious about making a difference, none of the things that he says this is going to deliver are going to make a jot of difference for those people who need it most. Mr. Mayo, you will have heard a little earlier, has been recorded talking about the voice having power over superannuation. Now, I'd have thought that's hardly a policy that affects Indigenous Australians differently. After all, everyone who works, whatever their race or culture, gets super. But if that's something within scope, then surely every aspect of policy will fall within it. What's your take, Jacinta?
Look, that's absolutely right, Amanda. Nothing is off the table, really, and this government can say whatever it likes, but unless it has outlined that, and that is made clear through what will be constitutionally enshrined in that chapter, which is not, then nothing is off the table. And superannuation certainly is on the table. Anything to do with the mining industry, with agriculture, tourism, just about any policy that affects Australians, the voice can have a say on, because ultimately, well, we're Australian citizens. And that's another question I put to the government on the floor of the Senate. I said, are Aboriginal Australians Australian citizens? And Minister Chisholm had to actually seek advice from his advisor and didn't actually come back with a straight yes or no on that question. So, look, nothing is off the table, and that's the danger of this voice.
That takes a lot to floor me, Jacinta, but the idea that he had to check to find out whether Aboriginal people are Australian citizens, and he's the guy answering the questions for Labor in the Senate, that is just plain terrifying. It's clear to me that Labor are now trying to downplay the voice and boost the emphasis on constitutional recognition. But how will you and others on the No campaign be able to combat that tactical change that says don't say the voice word?
Oh, look, we'll be making sure that we use the word voice, because it's going to be right there in the question that goes to the Australian people as well. And look, I don't think Australians are silly. They're waking up to the reality of what's being presented to them. They want more information. They want more detail. They don't want warm and fuzzy platitudes, which is what we often get. And when I put it to Senator Malindari McCarthy on the floor of the Senate, when I said, can the government guarantee that this will improve the lives of Indigenous Australians? She could not provide me an answer, but what she did say was that it provides hope. Now, hope doesn't fix the lives of our most marginalised. Hope doesn't certainly reduce the prices of Australians' power bills at the moment. We're relying on this government to address issues and meet the needs of the Australian people, including marginalised Indigenous Australians. But again, Australians aren't silly. They can see the game that the Albanese government is playing, and I have no doubt that they'll be able to ensure that the right vote is had and Australians will be safe again after this referendum.
Jacinta Price, you're doing a standout job. Thank you so much for your time tonight.